Chapter 76. Romantic dinner. For a moment, none of them said a word. Then Serena broke the silence. "Well," she began, swinging her staff over her shoulder. "I suppose this is where we all take a breather. You sure you don't want to stick around for the shop's opening?" Inigo asked. Serena smiled. "Tempting, but I think I'll head back to my temple for a bit. Reconnect. Pray. Maybe make a donation or three." "You mean show off?" Lyra teased. Serena gave her a mock glare. "Please, I show off with grace." Alira chuckled softly. "I'll return to the estate. Father will want to hear about the expedition, especially since half the treasure has ties to pre-Empire civilization. He'll demand every historical detail." "You think he'll try to keep one of the artifacts?" Inigo asked. "Only the cursed ones," she replied, grinning. "The harmless stuff? I'm claiming for the family museum." They all laughed again, but there was something a little quieter behind the sound now. An unspoken acknowledgement that, for a while at least, they'd be walking different paths. "We'll meet again soon," Alira said. "Once the shop's up and running. I want to see what this mcronald buzz is all about." Serena nodded. "And if you need help, just ask." Inigo gave a two-fingered salute. "Deal." The two women departed down different streets, cloaks fluttering behind them. Alira toward the merchant district, Serena toward the Temple Hills. That left Inigo and Lyra alone. The noise of the city faded into a comfortable hush as they turned to each other. "So," Lyra said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, "looks like we've got the night to ourselves." Inigo raised a brow. "You saying that like it's a dangerous thing?" "It might be," she replied, grinning. "Depends how reckless you are." He chuckled. "Well, I do want to take you out for dinner." "I see, dinner, huh?" Lyra asked, glancing at him from the corner of her eye. "Yes, gold in the bank, demon in the dirt, and a whole night to burn," Inigo said. "You've earned more than a meal, honestly." "Well," she said, pretending to think it over, "I wouldn't mind some wine, or steak, or maybe a rooftop with a view." Inigo smiled. "You're not cheap, are you?" "I can be sometimes. And I think this day we deserved a treat," she replied proudly. They walked for a while longer, enjoying the rare peace after the chaos of the dungeon. Occasionally, passersby gave them curious looks. Adventurers in gear with a famous drone trailing them wasn't exactly subtle, but the pair didn't pay it much mind. Inigo stopped in front of a quiet place tucked between two larger taverns. The sign above read "The Glinting Rose," painted in elegant script and outlined in silver leaf. "I've heard good things," he said. "Private booths, real chefs, not just tavern slop." Lyra's eyebrows lifted. "I didn't know you had taste." "You wound me." They stepped inside. The interior was warm and inviting. Marble floors, clean-cut tables with candles at the center, and velvet-draped booths gave the place a refined atmosphere. A host in a tailored suit recognized Inigo immediately, either from his exploits or his Arkwell-backed credit, and led them to a private corner booth near a window overlooking the western ridge of Eldrith. A bottle of chilled wine was brought over without needing to be ordered. Lyra's eyes twinkled. "This is surprisingly romantic," she said, swirling her glass. "Sir, the novel F.ir.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. It's supposed to be," Inigo mumbled. As food arrived, grilled venison, spiced root vegetables, and a charred loaf with garlic butter, the two fell into an easy rhythm. They talked about everything and nothing. Lyra told stories about her early years in adventuring, how she once mistook a noblewoman's pet drake for a dungeon spawn and nearly shot it between the eyes. Inigo countered with tales from his world, though he kept it vague. Technology, corporations, fast food chains. Lyra found it hard to believe but listened anyway, fascinated by the strangeness of it all. "You ever miss your old life?" she asked after a pause. Inigo didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the glowing skyline. "Sometimes," he said, "but not really. I didn't have much left to hold on to." Lyra nodded quietly. "Well, you've got something now." He looked at her, and for a moment it was just the two of them. No howitzers, no monsters, no magical threats. Just two people trying to figure out what came next. "I do," he finally said. Inigo glanced toward the small wooden stage tucked in the far corner of the Glinting Rose. A young bard had taken to it, plucking softly at a lyre and singing in a melancholic alto voice. The background music wasn't intrusive, more like a warm thread stitched into the restaurant's air, but it sparked something in him. He looked at Lyra. Her attention had drifted toward the windows again, her wineglass turning slowly between her fingers. "Hey," he said, drawing her attention back. "What would you say if I told you I used to sing?" Her brows lifted. "You? You can sing." "Used to," he said with a small smile. "Back in the days." Lyra smiled. "Is that so?" "Yes." She tilted her head, studying him with mild disbelief. "You're not kidding." "I'm not. In fact." Inigo stood up and set his napkin down. "I think I'm gonna try something. Wait here." "Inigo, what?" But he was already striding toward the stage. The bard paused mid-note as Inigo approached. After a quiet exchange, one that involved a few raised brows and a nod from the host, Inigo was handed a sleek, enchanted lute with polished strings and a subtle reverb charm etched into the body. He stepped onto the small platform. His heart beat faster than it had when facing the dungeon demon. Funny how easy it was to fight monsters, and how hard it was to be vulnerable. The soft murmur in the restaurant quieted. Heads turned, but no one interrupted. Back at their booth, Lyra sat stunned, unsure if this was a joke or something real. Inigo took a deep breath. He strummed a familiar chord, one he hadn't played in years, but his fingers remembered. The melody was foreign to this world, yet it flowed from him like it belonged. He began to sing. "I used to wanna be living like there's only me." The first few words hung awkwardly in the air, but his voice was steady, clean, warm, the sort of voice that could quiet a room not through volume, but through presence. "But now I spend my time thinking about a way to get you off my mind." People began to listen, not just politely, but earnestly. The lyrics were unfamiliar, yet the feeling was universal. "I used to be so tough, never really gave enough. And then you caught my eye." He glanced at Lyra. His voice dipped into something soft as he continued. "Look at me now, I'm Fallon. Can't even talk, still stuttering." Lyra's lips parted, caught between surprise and awe. He wasn't bluffing. He could sing. Beautifully, in fact. Not just hitting notes, but delivering them with feeling. The kind that wrapped around your chest and made it ache in the best way. And then he sang the chorus, and the rest of the song, capturing the eyes and ears of all the patrons of the restaurant. When he reached the final line, the lute strings trailing behind his voice like a tailwind, the room went still. There was no applause at first. No whoops or cheers. Just silence, heavy and sacred. Like no one dared to speak and risk shattering what they'd just witnessed. And Inigo? He only looked at Lyra. She rose from her seat slowly, her eyes fixed on him as he handed back the lute. She walked toward him, each step steady, as though any hesitation might break the spell. When she reached him, she didn't say a word. Not at first. Just looked up at him, her eyes soft with something he didn't dare name. Then, quietly, she leaned in and kissed him. Soft, warm, unhurried. Not hungry like battle-born passion, but slow, tender, like she was finally letting go of a tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. When she pulled back, her voice came out in a whisper. "That was the most reckless thing I've seen you do." He grinned. "Worth it?" She nodded, barely holding in a smile. "Absolutely." The applause swelled slowly at first, then filled the restaurant like a warm tide. One by one, patrons rose from their tables, clapping and cheering. Not for a hero or an adventurer this time, but for a man who'd bared his heart in the form of a song. "Young man," one of the older women at a nearby table called out, "if that shop of yours fails, you could make a living serenading nobles." Another guest added, "Or steal their daughters." Even the host, ever the professional, gave a nod of genuine respect. "They know about my restaurant," Inigo muttered under his breath. Inigo scratched the back of his head as Lyra laughed softly beside him. He took her hand and stepped down from the stage, his heart still thudding, not from nerves, but from something far gentler. "Come on," he said, smiling. "Let's go home." Chapter 77. The day after Inigo returned to Amber's hearth after walking Lyra home, his steps light and his thoughts all over the place. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a soft silver glow across the cobblestone streets. His heart was still racing, not from battle, not from fear, but from something far more terrifying, romance. He had sung, actually sung, in public, and it worked. His lips curled into a grin the moment he stepped into his room. The door shut behind him with a soft thud, muffling the sounds of the city. He collapsed onto the bed and stared at the wooden ceiling, one arm behind his head. God, I actually sang somebody to you in front of people who don't even know what pop music is. He cringed. A little. But at the same time, the memory of Lyra's expression, the softness in her eyes, the kiss she gave him, wiped away any lingering embarrassment. That's a win, he murmured to himself. That's a damn win. And not just in love. His balance now sat at a whopping 170,235 tokens. The Minotaur dungeon had paid out well, especially after bonuses. He didn't quite understand the algorithm behind the freedom actions and shock and multipliers, but apparently the system loved theatrics. Sing a song in public? Get paid. Saving the girls in the dungeon and being cool while at it? Double it. Inigo chuckled and folded his arms behind his head. Still, the money didn't answer the deeper itch. The nagging question of, what now? He had a business that would likely explode once the city's elites got a taste of his burgers. He had companions, real ones, and probably a girlfriend now, pending confirmation. But the thrill of the dungeon was different. That danger, that high-stakes edge-of-death adrenaline, couldn't be bottled. And part of him didn't want to let it go. Maybe he could do both. Be a businessman and an adventurer. Build an empire and travel the world. Greedy bastard, he muttered, smiling. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with him. He stripped down to his tunic and slipped under the covers. Wheeler, in its powered-down mode, sat quietly in the corner like a loyal dog. Inigo's eyes fluttered shut. His last thought before sleep took him was of Lyra's kiss and the faint taste of red wine. The sun rose quickly over Eldrith. The marketplace district came alive with the clang of metal shutters, the bark of vendors hawking fresh bread and fruits, and the endless chatter of early shoppers. Inigo stood in front of the shop, McRonald, and entered. "All right," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Let's make history." The first few customers were curious townsfolk, mostly teens and early risers. A few were noble servants sent to spy or sample. Then came the crowd. Word had already spread thanks to last week's soft opening. Adventurers, merchants, students from the academy, and even a few city guards formed a long but orderly line outside the storefront. Orders flew in. The Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. 2 burgers and fries. Make that one of those ice drinks too. What do you call it? Orange. Yeah, that. Tastes like lightning in a cup. Inigo moved like a machine. He grilled, salted, and served with speed. Then, just past noon, 2 familiar faces arrived. Serena and Alira. Serena wore a casual temple robe, sleeves rolled up in hair in a bun. She waved as she entered. "I said I'd be here." Alira, on the other hand, looked like she stepped out of a royal painting. Silk blouse, silver brooch, and lace gloves. "Gods, what is that smell?" she said, wrinkling her nose. "It smells greasy." "You're not in the palace anymore," Serena said with a smirk. "That's the smell of joy." Inigo approached from behind the counter, still wiping his hands on a towel. "Ladies," he greeted with a grin. "Welcome to McRonald." Alira blinked at him. "You're really wearing an apron." "Damn right I am." She stepped forward and peered at the menu etched magically on the enchanted display board. "What on earth is a quarter-pound beef patty double stack with cheddar and McSauce?" "A miracle between 2 buns," Serena replied, already placing her order. "One of those for me, please, and fries." Alira hesitated. Inigo leaned on the counter, arms folded. "You trust me?" "Rarely," Alira replied, then paused. "But I suppose you've earned a little trust after saving my life in a collapsing dungeon." "Fine, I'll try the classic burger." "No regrets," Inigo said, nodding to the cook behind him. Within minutes, the food was delivered on polished wooden trays. Buns golden and soft, patties thick and juicy, and the fries seasoned with a special herb salt blend Inigo had fine-tuned after days of experimentation. Alira picked up the burger with 2 fingers, like it was some exotic foreign object. She sniffed it. Serena had already taken a bite. "MMH, every time," Serena said, chewing happily. "Your ancestors knew what they were doing." Alira raised an eyebrow, then cautiously bit into her own. The flavor hit her tongue like thunder. The smoky sear of the beef, the tang of sauce, the crunch of lettuce and onion. Her eyes widened. She slowly chewed, swallowed, and then blinked at Inigo. "Is this what your world eats regularly?" "More or less," She looked back at the burger. Gods help us, she whispered. You're going to start a revolution. Serena laughed out loud. Told you. Inigo shrugged modestly. Just a humble restaurateur bringing culinary enlightenment. They ate at a reserved table near the window, and more familiar faces started filtering in. Students from the academy, a few bronze-ranked adventurers, and even the local town guard captain, who ordered 4 burgers and asked if McRonald did delivery. By late afternoon, the line outside hadn't shrunk. Inigo was beginning to run low on bread and condiments, but he'd expected it. No chicken on the menu yet. That would come later once supply chains were more stable. Alira stood and brushed off her gloves. I'll be sponsoring your expansion, she said. Consider it an investment. Inigo blinked. You're serious? I'll draw up the papers by tomorrow, she said. This place will need a second location by the end of the month. Serena grinned. And I'll pray for your fryers not to catch fire. Thanks, I guess. Anyways, where's Lyra? I think she's coming up late, Inigo replied, glancing toward the front door. She said she had something to take care of first. As if on cue, the bells above the door jingled. Lyra stepped in, tugging her gloves off with her teeth, wind-blown and slightly flushed from running. She wore a light leather jacket over a dark red undershirt, her hair tied loosely back. A small pack was slung over one shoulder. Told you I'd make it, she said, catching her breath as she marched straight behind the counter without hesitation. You're late, Inigo teased. You're welcome for showing up at all. She leaned in and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, earning a bullsud from Serena and a smug smile from Alira, who was halfway through her fries. I see someone's upgraded from party member to business partner, Alira said. Lyra, Inigo, are you two dating? Yes, Lyra said, tossing her pack down in the kitchen corner. Well, given that the two of you spent a lot of time together, I'd say that's natural, Alira remarked. Exactly, Lyra said with a smug. Inigo handed her the black apron he'd kept folded on a nearby shelf. Okay, I think we started just yesterday, so let's not get ahead of ourselves yet. Lyra, I need you in the kitchen. She slipped it on with practiced ease, tying the strings behind her back. All right, I'm ready, he grinned. Grill station's yours. I'll handle the assembly, plating, and taking orders from customers. A moment later, the kitchen sizzled to life again with the rhythmic sound of meat hitting metal. The smell of fresh patties filled the air. Inigo glanced sideways and saw her already in the zone, brow furrowed, flipping with precision. Getting good, huh? He commented. Inigo laughed. Despite the crowd, things moved smoothly. With Lyra beside him, the flow of the kitchen felt natural, like gears clicking into place. They worked in tandem, moving around each other with ease, stealing glances, exchanging jokes over the roar of the grill and the chatter outside. At one point, Lyra leaned in during a lull and whispered, You know this isn't bad for a next date. He raised a brow. Sweating in a hot kitchen while flipping meat for half the city is your idea of a date? She smirked. You sang last night. Everything after that's just extra. He grinned. Point taken. The sun began to dip again, casting golden rays through the front windows. More and more customers filtered in, and some even left tips. Mostly silver coins, but a few enchanted trinkets and curious tokens too. By the time the rush started dying down, the shop was nearly sold out of fries, and they were down to the last few buns. Still, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and satisfaction. And at the heart of it all were Inigo and Lyra, shoulder to shoulder, grease-stained, tired, but grinning like idiots. This, Inigo thought, glancing at her as she playfully tossed him a finished patty, was a kind of happiness he never knew he could find. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 78. The Demon King and Lords and Lady beyond the borders of Eldrith, beyond the deepest mountain ranges and the highest reaches of magic, there existed a place where reality frayed. The sky hung in tatters of swirling crimson and ash, torn open by some ancient calamity. This was the Rift, a land forsaken by the gods, feared by mortals, and sealed off from the world. At its heart stood a colossal obsidian fortress, its towers crooked like black fangs against the blood-hued sky. The Rift Castle. Inside its dark halls, a long chamber stretched like the inside of a cathedral. Fire braziers flickered with sickly green flame, casting distorted shadows against stone walls etched with runes too old to be deciphered. At the far end of the hall, a throne sat atop a raised platform. It was a thing of jagged stone and bones, crude yet regal. Seated there was the Demon King, He wore no crown, for he needed none. His presence alone was enough to command the full terror of the realm. Clad in black and crimson armor that pulsed with a heartbeat of its own, he leaned forward slightly, fingers clasped under his chin. His face, bare and human-like, was impossibly handsome, but wrong in all the ways that mattered. Too symmetrical, too perfect, like a mask crafted to deceive. "Status," he said, his voice deep, silky, and echoing unnaturally through the chamber. One of the figures standing below the throne stepped forward. A tall man with white, thread-like hair and eyes like swirling galaxies. A cloak of violet shimmered around his shoulders, and his long fingers toyed with a deck of shifting cards that never stopped moving. "Lord of Fate reporting," he said with a sly smile. "Our agents in the eastern continent whisper of strange disruptions in magical equilibrium, particularly near the city of Eldrith." The Demon King tilted his head slightly. "A disruption?" "Yes," Fate continued, lazily drawing a card from his deck and letting it spin midair. "Anomaly magic. Not of this world. The threads don't weave around it, they bend, snap, and realign. Someone is tampering with destiny." From the left, a woman let out a low laugh. She was tall, sleek, and terrifyingly graceful. Her face was veiled behind a mask shaped like a weeping skull, and black feathers crowned her shoulders. Her robe was stitched from funeral silks, and her bare arms were painted in runes of mourning. "Shall I send a reaping?" she asked. "Test the strength of this anomaly?" She was the Lady of Death, firstborn of the Night Hollow Coven. "No," said another voice, sharp and impatient. The second general stepped forward, an armored brute with a flaming warhammer slung across his back. His eyes were molten gold, and every step he took cracked the obsidian floor beneath. His armor was scorched and battle-worn, carved with symbols of ancient war gods long extinguished. This was the Lord of Destruction. "If something dares disturb the order of the rift, then it should be crushed," he said. "Fate reads signs, death picks corpses, but I say we test this anomaly with war." "Always with war," Fate muttered, not unkindly. From the shadows, the final general emerged. She glided more than walked. Her body shimmered with a constantly shifting illusion. Sometimes a young girl, sometimes an old crone, sometimes a serpentine beauty with slit pupils. Her laughter echoed from multiple corners of the chamber at once. "The Lady of Illusion agrees," she said. Her voice multiplied and layered. "But not with war, with games. Let us toy with this disruption, test its will, find out what it wants." The Demon King said nothing at first. His red eyes glowed beneath his brow like twin stars. "Fate," he said at last. "Yes, my king. Draw me a card." The Lord of Fate's lips curled. He raised his deck and pulled a single card, letting it drift lazily down into his palm. He looked at it, and his smile faded. "Well?" asked Destruction, narrowing his eyes. Fate slowly turned the card so the others could see. A single, grinning face stared back from the painted surface. A chaotic design with mismatched colors and erratic script. A being of unpredictability and madness. It was not one of the deck's normal divinations. "The Joker," he said softly. A hush fell over the chamber. Lady Death's voice turned serious. "That's impossible. The Joker was expunged from the deck after the fall of the third seal." "I know," Fate replied, frowning. "I burned it myself." "Then what does it mean?" asked Illusion, her many faces flickering rapidly between confusion and glee. Fate closed his hand over the card. "It means there's a wild variable in the world. Someone who doesn't follow prophecy, order, or divine fate. A soul unbound." The Demon King stood slowly from his throne, his armored boots echoing against the dark stone. He descended the platform one step at a time, and his generals parted to make way, heads lowered. When he reached the bottom, he walked toward the nearest window, if it could be called that. A jagged rent in the wall, showing the swirling chaos of the riftstorm beyond. "An unbound soul," he repeated. "Like I once was." None of the generals responded. "Is it a threat?" Destruction finally asked. The Demon King turned just slightly. "All things are threats to order, but chaos is the greatest opportunity." Lady Illusion chuckled. "Then shall we invite this unbound soul to dance?" "No," said the Demon King. "We observe, we study. If he is what I suspect, he will come to us on his own." "And if he doesn't?" Lady Death inquired, folding her arms. Then, the king said, returning to his throne, we shall show him what it means to defy destiny. Fate nodded. I will assign seers to monitor the capital of Eldrith and the surrounding ley lines. If anything warps the threads, we'll know. Good. The king seated himself again, resting his clawed gauntlet on the armrest of his throne. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then destruction broke the silence. I am restless. You are always restless, muttered Illusion. I require combat. Let me take the Scourge Legion and test the humans on the Borderlands. A minor skirmish. Nothing grand. The Demon King gave a faint nod. Take only the first blade of Scourge. Do not provoke the gods. Not yet. Understood. Death? The king said, looking at the veiled woman. You are to return to the Shadow Wastes. Something stirs among the Barrow Lords. I want their loyalty reaffirmed. She bowed her head. As you command. And Illusion. Yes, my king. I want you to seed dreams across the noble courts. Spread tales of the rift. Let the mortals remember that their world is still watched. She laughed, a sound like wind through cracked glass. Oh, I have just the stories. Fate flicked his fingers and the card vanished in a puff of stardust. He clutched his deck tightly. And what of me? You, said the king, will remain here, study the anomaly, and if you learn its name, I'll let the cards decide his fate. The Demon King closed his eyes, and for a moment, the air inside the Rift Castle grew still, so still it felt like time had stopped. Then his voice rumbled again, low and final. The age of gods is dying. Mortals pretend they are free. Let them. But when the veil thins, we will march again. The generals bowed in unison, as they each turned to leave, splitting in different directions across the castle. Fate lingered just a moment longer. He glanced once more at the now empty throne. Then, slowly, he whispered under his breath, Unbound souls. Always make the best tragedies. As the others departed into the gloom, destruction stomping off toward the lower barracks, death gliding silently toward the spiral stair, and Illusion vanishing into thin air with a chime of mirrored laughter, only Fate remained beneath the throne. The green firelight flickered in his eyes as he looked down at his hand. Though the card was gone, he could still feel it. That joker, that anomaly, always make the best tragedies, he repeated with a quiet smirk, then turned toward the hall's shadowed exit. The moment he passed beneath the archway, the chamber dimmed further. The green flames receded into hushed embers. For now, the throne was empty. S.E.A. the Novel Fire. Any *T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. But even without its master, the room seemed alive. Whispers echoed faintly across the stone. Fragments of a forgotten language, lost to time. Ghosts of the first calamity, bound forever to the rift. And then, just for an instant, the wind howled through the broken window, and the torches flared back to life. Something unseen stirred far above, where the highest tower of the Rift Castle pierced the chaos sky like a needle into the heavens. There, chained in rings of eternal lightning, slept something ancient, older than the rift, older than the gods. It shifted once, sensing the Joker's presence, and for the first time in centuries, a single burning eye cracked open, watching, waiting. The unbound soul had awakened more than fate. Chapter 79. Trying out some moves. 1 month had passed. The last time Inigo stood in the courtyard of the Magical Academy, he was just some curious transfer student, with a few tricks up his sleeve and a burger empire beginning to take root. Now, after 30 days of relentless, self-imposed training, he had returned, not just sharper, but faster, stronger, and deadlier. And he was ready to show it. The morning sun bathed the marble walkways of the academy in gold as students in their signature uniforms milled about, gossiping, training, or rushing to their lectures. Magic users practiced their spells near the spellcasting towers while martial students dueled with wooden swords in the eastern yard. Inigo made his way to the training field reserved for solo practice. It was open, flat, surrounded by small cliffs and trees that had seen hundreds of spells and arrows fly by them. Today it would see something new. He stretched once, cracking his knuckles and rolling his shoulders. Let's start small, Inigo whispered. He planted his feet and leapt. A normal jump would have brought him 2 feet off the ground. But this wasn't normal. With a focused pulse of his augmented leg strength and a subtle shift of magical energy, Inigo bent the air beneath him. SAR the Novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. and jumped again mid-air. Double jump successful, he muttered as he landed softly 10 meters away. In his previous world, it was an impossible move. It only existed in games where action and combat are the theme. But here, with his enchantment magic, he could do it without breaking a sweat. And the good thing is, he could control it using only his imagination of him doing double jumps. Now for the next. He dashed forward. No, he blinked. A white streak blurred from where he was to where he stopped, covering 30 feet in an instant. He stood behind a mock target mannequin with a sword raised, but paused. Still not instant. But damn close, he whispered, grinning. From his side holster, he pulled the Desert Eagle in a smooth draw, the sunlight glinting off its barrel. Targets shimmered into being. Magic created illusions programmed to move unpredictably, sidestepping, dodging, and zigzagging at variable speeds. 10 in total spread across the clearing. Bang, bang, bang. The first 3 dropped instantly, clean holes between their eyes. Inigo moved with fluid precision, spinning on his heel and sliding into cover behind a boulder, then popping up for another shot. Bang, bang. 2 more gone. 3 targets circled, trying to flank him. He blink-dashed behind them, reversed grip, and aimed upward in midair. Bang, bang. 1 missed. Inigo twisted, landed in a roll, and fired again. Bang. The last 2 tried to bolt. Not today. He switched the ammo type mid-reload, a function that shouldn't have been possible but was added thanks to his enchantment magic. Cryo rounds loaded. Bang. An ice shot froze the target mid-run. He walked calmly toward the final one, who turned and sprinted with realistic AI fear. He didn't even aim. He blinked forward again, and fired point-blank. Bang. Smoke lifted from the barrel. Not bad, Inigo said, holstering the gun. But he wasn't done. He turned toward the artificial cliff. Its ledges staggered like a climbing wall. Without hesitating, he sprinted straight at it. 1 step, then 2, then a jump. Then another mid-air. His boots kicked off a jutting stone and he flipped himself higher. He reached the top in under 10 seconds. From this vantage point, he surveyed the entire field and then closed his eyes. New terrain activated. A countdown ticked. 3, 2, 1. Then the whole world shifted. Targets appeared everywhere. 100 moving dots. Flying discs, fast-moving orbs, illusion soldiers charging his position. They flickered in and out like holograms. But every one of them could deliver a simulated hit. Let's go. Inigo jumped and danced. Like something out of a sci-fi anime, his form became a blur. Double jumps, blink dashes, mid-air flips. He fired while spinning, while falling backward, while upside down. Each movement fed into the next. Sometimes he dodged bullets. Sometimes he intercepted incoming attacks with his own shots. Bang, bang, SHHK, dash, twist, roll. He landed in a crouch, chest heaving, sweat on his brow despite the chill enchantment on his shirt. Then, slow applause echoed across the cliffs. Inigo looked up. Someone was watching. The audience was Serena and Lyra. They peeked from behind a pillar with widened eyes. "How long have you been there?" he called, standing up and wiping his brow. "Long enough to know you've been holding back," Serena said, smiling. "You didn't use any of that in the last dungeon run." "I didn't have it back then," Inigo replied. Lyra stepped forward. "What in the god's name was that movement? I've seen shadow blades that can't even blink that cleanly." Serena gave a small smile. "I always knew he had secrets." Inigo holstered his gun and folded his arms. "What can I say? I train hard." Serena walked closer, arms crossed. "That gun of yours, it doesn't run on magic, does it?" "Nope, pure kinetic force, with a few tricks." She furrowed her brows. "You're not a mage, not a knight, not a rogue. So, what are you?" Inigo smirked. "I'm the guy who rewrites the playbook." They stood there in silence as the system reset the simulation zone behind him. "Do we get to spar with you?" Serena asked. "Later," Inigo said. "Today was just me showing off." "You succeeded," Serena said, almost grudgingly. Lyra just gave him a knowing smile. Inigo walked over to the edge of the field and sank onto a bench beneath the shade of an old elm tree. The cool breeze felt good against his skin, his chest still rising and falling from the intensity of his session. He grabbed a water flask from his side pouch and took a long drink, letting the silence settle. His eyes drifted toward Serena, who now stood in the center of the field, casually twirling her staff with one hand. Her eyes met his, and there was a gleam in them, not of amusement, but anticipation. "Rest up," she said with a grin. "You'll need it." Inigo chuckled. Looking forward to it. Chapter 80. Mock duel. The afternoon sun hung high, casting golden rays over the courtyard as students gradually gathered around the edges of the training field. Word spread quickly. Serena, the high-ranking priestess mage, had challenged Inigo to a duel after witnessing his wild new moves. It was rare for any student, let alone someone like her, to call for an open challenge. See thnovelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Even rarer was Inigo accepting it with a grin. They now stood on opposite ends of the training yard, a magic barrier already in place to absorb stray projectiles. Professors and students lined the perimeter, some perched on benches, others hovering above on enchanted platforms. Inigo rolled his neck once and unsnapped the holster that held his Desert Eagle. He didn't draw it yet. His feet shifted into a relaxed stance, arms at his sides. Serena spun her staff once and tapped its base on the ground. A ripple of holy magic pulsed from her, and golden runes lit up beneath her boots. "You ready?" she asked, smirking. "I was born ready," Inigo replied, blinking once, literally. He vanished. The sound of displacement cracked the air as Serena twisted, her eyes darting. A second later, Inigo reappeared directly to her left, fist swinging. She barely blocked with her staff, the blow rippling through her arms. The sheer speed stunned her. He was faster than most elite martial duelists she'd seen. Serena gritted her teeth and retaliated, casting a flare spell. A burst of blinding light erupted around her, meant to disorient close-range attackers. But Inigo was already gone. A streak of white light zipped past her vision and suddenly, bang, a shot rang out from behind. Serena jerked back, activating a magical shield just in time as the enchanted bullet collided with it, sending crackling golden sparks into the air. "He's fast," she muttered, preparing a volley of radiant bolts. 3 spheres of condensed light hovered over her shoulder, then fired in succession toward where Inigo had last appeared. He blinked again, midair this time, dodging each bolt with impossible precision, rebounding off an illusion platform he summoned underfoot. Inigo twisted, spun sideways, and fired 2 shots while upside down. Bang, bang. Serena raised her staff and chanted a protective phrase. A dome of light encased her, absorbing the first bullet. The second curved unnaturally, thanks to Inigo's enchantment, and struck the edge of her shield, shattering it like glass. He landed in a crouch, rolled forward, and dashed again, his blink dash cutting a white streak through the arena. Serena fired a shockwave from her palm. The force blasted across the field, cracking the ground and tossing loose gravel into the air. But again, he wasn't there. "Inigo," she called, trying to predict his next move. "I'm everywhere," came his voice from above. She looked up, eyes widening. Inigo was mid-air, spinning in a dive. He double-jumped to extend the fall, flipping into a dive kick pose. His enchanted boots sparked with kinetic energy as he dropped like a meteor. Boom! The impact wasn't devastating, but it blew a dust cloud over the field. Serena skidded backward, forced to use a barrier spell again just to stay on her feet. By the time the dust cleared, Inigo was already behind her. She turned, but too slow. He pointed the gun point blank at her forehead. Bang! But the round stopped just inches from her skin, suspended in midair by a quick-cast ward that glowed between them. Serena took the opportunity to leap back and chant a longer spell. Her hands drew intricate shapes in the air, golden threads weaving around her body. "Fiery lances!" she cried. 5 radiant lances burst forth from the heavens, slamming toward Inigo. The courtyard lit up with holy light. Boom! 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 A massive cloud of radiant mist covered the area. Students gasped. Did she hit him? Is he down? Serena panted, lowering her staff slightly, eyes squinting into the smoke. Then, bang! The smoke rippled outward as a bullet pierced it. A warning shot. The lance of light dissipated just inches from Serena's face as Inigo emerged from the fading glow, unscathed. He had blinked out right before the lances hit. His hair was slightly singed, but he was smiling. "How?" she whispered. "I learned to pre-blink," he said, tapping the side of his temple. "Anticipate the incoming attack. Teleport 1 beat ahead. The moment I saw your hands shift to long-form casting, I knew." "You monster!" she breathed, then laughed. You're not just fast. You're strategic. I try. Serena charged again, this time without a spell. Staff swinging, radiant aura flaring. Inigo dodged the first swing, blinked past the second, and parried the third with the frame of his gun. He kicked the base of her staff, spinning her weapon sideways, then blinked behind her. But this time, Serena turned and cast a wide cone of blinding light. It hit him square in the eyes. "Got you!" she shouted. For a second, he flinched, but the grin never left his face. Inigo pulled out a second Desert Eagle and shot downward. Bang! A concussive blast hit the ground, launching him backward through the air and out of her radius. He landed nimbly, eyes red from the flash, but still seeing enough. "You always keep a second gun?" she gasped. Inigo didn't respond. Serena smirked, then cast a quick heal on herself. "Let's see how long you can dance." The next 30 seconds were a blur. Spells fired. Bullets flew. Teleportations, mid-air dodges, rebounds off walls, misdirection, ricochet shots. But Serena was slowing down. Her spells became shorter, her breathing heavier. Even her heals began to lag in cast time. Inigo, meanwhile, was as sharp as ever. Eventually, with one last blink dash behind her, he fired. Bang! Her staff flew from her hand and hit the ground with a clatter. Inigo was standing behind her, barrel resting on her shoulder. "You're done." She raised her hands in mock surrender. All right, I yield." The field erupted in scattered applause and amazed murmurs. A professor nearby nodded in approval. "That was not what I expected," Serena said, stepping away and summoning her staff back with a gesture. "I thought I'd at least push you harder." "You did," Inigo said. "I just trained like hell." She smiled, then tilted her head. "So what are you going to do with all this power?" He holstered both guns. "Make burgers, and maybe protect the world if it ever needs it." Lyra finally stepped into the field, clapping slowly. "You two were amazing. Honestly, Serena, you kept up way longer than I expected." "Thanks, I think." Inigo flopped onto the same bench under the elm tree. "I need a nap after that." "You don't look tired at all," Serena remarked. "I said I need a nap. Didn't say I earned one." Lyra giggled. "Tomorrow, rematch?" "Sure," Inigo said, closing his eyes. "But next time, no light blinding spells. I'm still seeing stars."